Hi folks, this is Dr. Z, and this is my trusty Real Flight 5.5 airplane simulator. And this video is about the notorious downwind turn myth. I say myth because I don't believe the downwind turn myth like a lot of people do. What is the downwind turn myth? Well, the myth states that an airplane flying in steady wind will lose airspeed as it turns downwind. The downwind turn is treacherous because as you lose airspeed turning downwind, the plane will tend to stall or lose altitude and or crash. The idea behind the myth seems logical at first glance. If you think about it, a plane flying along across the wind has wind blowing sort of sideways over the airplane, and as the plane turns downwind, now the wind starts kind of catching up with the plane from behind. So the wind is sort of chasing the plane. If it's extremely windy, maybe the wind will even blow over the wings backwards and you'll totally lose airspeed. If the wind isn't quite so fast, you'll just lose some of your airspeed. In any case, much more likely to stall, certainly lose airspeed, lose altitude, and likely crash. It sounds reasonable at first glance. The reason people make the error in this logic is that they miss the point of what's called a frame of reference. It's hard to envision that the plane is actually flying in a frame of reference that includes the air mass, the moving air mass. So from the plane's perspective, it's really not in any wind at all. Zip, zero, nada. Now I'm talking about a steady wind, not a gusty wind or changing wind or wind that's changing direction. We're talking about a perfectly steady wind, and it does not matter how fast the wind is. It could be 1 mile an hour or 1,000,000 miles an hour. Literally, 1,000,000 miles an hour. The physics holds true the same way. An airplane within this air mass moving at a wind speed of 1 mile an hour or 1,000,000 miles an hour will not lose airspeed as it turns downwind, even if that wind is going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Because the plane is in the frame of reference of the wind, it is of the wind and moving with the wind. So it is absolutely impossible for the plane to lose airspeed as it turns downwind if the wind is steady, not changing direction, not gusting, or changing at all. Now, this downwind turn myth is notorious because people debate it fiercely and passionately. Lots of folks have crashed on downwind turns and steadfastly believe through experience that there's something going on with the downwind turn, with the wind robbing you of airspeed, and people cannot be dissuaded from this belief. The fact is, downwind turns are dangerous. They're dangerous for a lot of reasons. It actually is very easy to crash on a downwind turn. I have trouble on downwind turns myself, even though I don't believe in the myth for a second. Maybe if in another video I'll go into the reasons why the downwind turn is dangerous. It has mostly to do with the perspective of the pilot on the ground or seeing the ground and getting confused with that frame of reference. If the pilot were to be conscious of the frame of reference that the plane is in, that is the moving air mass, and turn the plane downwind within that moving air mass, conscious of that air mass, the pilot would have absolutely no trouble whatsoever. It turns out that aerodynamically, a downwind turn is exactly the same as an upwind turn, no matter how fast the wind is going, aerodynamically. Still, the downwind turn is dangerous because pilots do make changes on the turn that affect the aerodynamics, thus causing a crash. Now again, the proponents of the myth will set up challenges and say, oh, that's crazy. If we put a plane in a configuration where it's about ready to stall and you turn it downwind, I guarantee you it's going to lose airspeed and crash. Well, I'm going to show you here proof that that is just not true. This simulator is very accurate when it comes to the physics that we're talking about, and I'm going to show you how I have it set up to demonstrate that the myth is a myth. I have you can see environment here, wind, turbulence. I'm going to put down to 0%. So the wind turbulence, you can see down in the lower left here, is at 0%, so I've got a perfectly steady wind. I can change the wind speed by going page up. Now we're at 9 miles per hour, and I can go page down back to 0 miles per hour. I've set up a plane called the Fly Zone Diablo, and there she is. And you can see from the controls here, I'm moving my controller stick, and you can see that the movements are followed on the screen here. And you can see that my trims are off a little bit. I've got a right-hand turn keyed in with the trims, and I've got full up elevator. The reason I did this is because the plane will hold a steady turn, holding airspeed and holding altitude all by itself. This plane has dihedral, which makes it very stable in flight, but it's not the most stable plane in the quiver here. It is a ducted fan. Ducted fans is a relatively inefficient design, so these planes are more prone to crashing and stalling than trainers are, and that's why I chose this plane. It is stable enough, though, to hold its attitude in 0 wind speed. We've got wind here labeled at 0. I'm going to fly this plane around for you in this configuration at half throttle and show you what she does.